tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Sir, could you please state your full name for the record?
Daniel Sevilla.
And Mr. Sevilla, could you please spell your first and last name also for the court reporter?
DANIELSEVILLA.
Mr. Sevilla, are you from the Nashville area?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you grow up here in the Nashville area?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically West Nashville?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm not going to ask you where you live now because that's not relevant, but how old are you?
31.
Okay. And you currently work, is that right?
That's correct.
And so you're missing work to be here today, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to be here today testifying in this trial?
No.
And why is that?
Just, I don't know. I don't have an answer.
I'm sorry?
I don't really have an answer. I just don't, something I don't want to do.
Okay, but you're under subpoena, right?
That's correct.
And so you're here, and you're here to tell the truth, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to that night of December 20th. I believe that was a Friday night into the early morning of Saturday, December 21st. Do you remember that night?
Some of it.
And kind of before you went out earlier in the evening, what were you doing?
Just enjoying the day, watching movies and so forth and so on.
And I don't want to know addresses or anything like that, but where were you at that evening?
At my father-in-law's house.
Okay. And back in 2019, did you go out regularly?
Yeah, something you do on the weekends.
Okay. And specifically that night, what did you end up doing?
We went to Copacabana, had a few drinks, and then decided to go bar hopping in Midtown.
Okay, and can you explain what Copacabana is?
It's a bar, hangout place for younger people.
What part of town is Copacabana
It's
in?
on Charlotte Pike in West Nashville.
Was that somewhere that you went often?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe, were you by yourself or were you with other people?
I ride by myself, and I've met 3 other people there.
Okay, can you describe those other people?
Another Hispanic male, just a girl, another girl, and then another guy, another white guy.
And the white guy, do you know his name?
Yes.
And what is his name?
Michael.
Do you know his last name?
Mosley.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
No, not really.
Could you, Mr. Sevilla, if you could you stand up and could you look around the entire courtroom?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, I see him.
Can you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Black shirt.
And could you point him out?
Over there.
Thank you. Can you describe what was going on when you were at Copacabana with the 3 other people?
Just a fun night, joking, drinking.
And you said that you left there to go bar hopping. Is that right?
That's correct.
And where did you plan to go, or what was the plan when you left Copacabana?
Park at Chewy's Bar, and then just hit the strip from there. No specific place.
And you said park at Chewy's Bar. Where's Chewy's Bar?
I don't know the exact location, but it's in Midtown.
Okay. And so when you leave Copacabana, there's not really a plan, but definitely going to go to Midtown. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were you planning on doing at the bar in Midtown?
Just continue with our drinking and continue to have fun.
Okay. Where did you ultimately end up going?
To Dogwood.
And is that a bar?
Yes, ma'am.
Had you ever been there before?
No, ma'am.
And do you remember what time you got there?
Approximately 137.
And once you got there, what did you do at Dogwood Bar?
Ordered some beers, had, a few fun laughs, and went from there.
And who were you with at the Dogwood Bar?
Mr. Mosley and 2 other people, and myself, of course.
And you said there was a female and then a Hispanic male, is that
Mhm.
right? And the female, who is that?
It's Miss JC, I believe is her name.
JC?
Mm-hmm.
And is that somebody that you knew?
I knew of her. I didn't really know her.
And what about Mr. Mosley? How well did you know him?
We knew each other, just from being around the same area.
So you said that you knew each other. Was he a close friend of yours?
Wouldn't say close or far. Just acquainted. We're all from the same area.
And is there an age difference between you and Mr. Mosley?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you describe that age difference? Are you older or younger?
I'm older.
Okay. So when you're at the Dogwood Bar, what do you remember happening, if anything, while you're there inside the bar?
Just we were having a blast. There was a female there by herself. Nothing bad about it. And he approached her. Nothing happened. And at the end of the night, there was a guy that came up the steps and started an altercation.
Okay. Which I want to kind of go back to before that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what's everybody, like, what are you doing? Is there...
We're just sitting there talking, conversating, I don't know, drinking.
Okay. And do you remember anything happening of significance before what you just described at the top of the stairs?
No, like I said, the biggest thing was just, a gentleman approaching a lady, and that was it. That was the end of the night, or that was the beginning of it, I guess.
Okay. And have you seen video from inside the bar?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been able to see yourself in that video?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we play a portion of that video, which, just for the record, in the left corner it says camera 13_DVR. The date at the top is 12/21/2019, Saturday 02/44/40, and at the bottom of the screen it says second FL stair top. Mr. Sevilla, do you see yourself in this image?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you can touch the screen.
Hold on just a second.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Is it on? Okay, go ahead, Jimmy.
Mr. Sevilla, do you see yourself in that image?
Yes, ma'am.
And could you touch the screen and kind of identify where you are?
Right here.
And do you see anybody else in your group in that image?
I see Miss JC right here.
Okay. And I'm going to ask that we play a portion of that video. And Mr. Sevilla, at this point, do you know any of these other people?
No, not at all.
And had you interacted with any of those other people that night?
No, not at all.
Now, if we could pause right here, this is 2024500 is the timestamp. Do you recognize the person that's just walked into view from the left side of the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you describe what type of clothing they have on?
Hoodie, jeans, and tennis shoes.
And is there a logo on the hoodie?
Nike logo.
And who is that person?
That's the other Hispanic guy.
Okay. And do you know his name?
No, not really.
Okay. How well do you know that person?
Not well at all. We're just all from the same neighborhood.
Okay. How many times would you say that you had hung out with that person before?
Maybe a couple times.
Okay. And if we could press play. Which, Mr. Sevilla, the clothes that you have on, can you describe what color they were?
It was a black jacket, regular jeans, and black and white shoes.
And so in this surveillance video, it kind of looks like it just shows up all gray. Is that right?
Correct.
And if you could describe, it's at 2:45:39. What are you doing?
Standing over there, headed downstairs to get a different kind of drink.
And who is the person at the top of the stairs?
Miss JC.
And it is 2:46 and 55 seconds. Now you have walked down the stairs at this point, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're further down the steps when this interaction is happening. If we could stop it there, since Mr. Sevilla is not in this image. And then have you also seen video from that staircase?
Yes.
Okay, if we could. For the record, this is DVR2_camera. The date is 12/21/2019. SAT 024720. And at the bottom of the right screen it says First FL Front Entry. Mr. Sevilla, if we could pause it here. Do you see yourself in this image?
Yes, ma'am.
And could you
Step
touch
up.
the screen just to confirm? And does this image accurately show the clothing that you were wearing that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And if we could press play. And so that's where you went when you walked down those stairs, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and at 2:47:58, you're not in this image anymore, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, Mr. Sevilla, can you describe when you go outside, what happens?
Big group of people. Everybody's outside of the club. Normal, time to let out, so everybody's there. Then Mr. Mosley got kind of crowded between a car and a bunch of people, and then a fight broke out, and it was time to run for your life.
Okay. And you said a fight broke out.
Mhm.
Did you participate in that fight?
Yeah, pushing and shoving and getting hit.
And so did you do some of the pushing?
Yes.
Did you do some of the shoving?
Yes.
Did you swing at people?
I'm sure.
And did you actually get pushed?
Yes.
And did you get shoved?
Mhm.
And at one point, did you get hit?
Yeah.
Can you describe that moment when you got hit?
Some gentleman came towards me and just punched the living crap out of me.
And that gentleman that punched you, What, if anything, did you remember about him?
He spoke Spanish.
So he was a Hispanic male.
Mm-hmm.
Was it someone you knew?
No, never seen him before.
And can you describe from you walk outside of the Dogwood Bar, where were you when you got punched?
Across the street.
So,
I ran my way across the street.
so that you're all the way across the street, other side of the street, across Division.
Mm-hmm.
And what, if any, injury did you suffer?
Just my lip busted.
You got a busted lip.
Yeah.
And is that the only time that you recall getting, like, actually punched?
Yeah, as far as I can remember.
And at any point, did you see anyone with any weapons?
No.
Did you have a weapon?
No.
Did you see anyone get stabbed outside on Division Street?
No, not at all.
And so once you got punched by the Hispanic male, what did you do?
I took off running to my car.
And where was your car at?
At Chewy's parking lot.
And I guess what type of car do you have?
Nissan Altima.
What color was it?
Red.
Did your group of four, did y'all all ride in your car, or how did you get from
No,
Cabana
it
to...
was 3 of us in one car, and then the other male rode in his car.
Okay. And so when you say 3 of us, are you referring to Mr. Mosley and Miss JC?
Mm-hmm. And myself.
And then the other male that you pointed out in the Nike shirt, he was in his own car.
Correct.
Do you remember what color that car was?
It was a darker color, Nissan as well. I don't know exactly what model.
Okay. And when you say darker color, your car's red. What's the darker color?
Black or darkest purple, something like that.
Okay. So when you go to your car, who's with you?
Miss JC and Mr. Mosley.
And does everybody get in your car?
Yes, we all 3 got in.
And when you drive away, are all 3 of you still in your car?
No, there was only 2 of us left.
And can you describe how that came to be?
Mr. Mosley hopped out, and then JC climbed over to my front seat.
Did you see where Mr. Mosley went when he got out of your car?
No, ma'am. He just got out, and it was time for me to go.
So when you drove away, it was just you and JC in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you go?
Taco Bell on Charlotte Pike.
Why did you go to Taco Bell?
To drop her off at her car because it was time for me to go home.
And after you went home, I guess, actually, like that moment, you've dropped JC off, you get home. What do you think happened in that moment on Division Street?
Bar fight that we got beat up.
Do you have any idea that anything more serious than that happened?
No, I went to work the next day.
And what happened while you were at work?
I got a call to tell me to check out the news.
And did you check out the news?
Yes.
And what did you see on the news?
A bad story. 2 people died at a bar fight that happened to be the same bar that I was at.
And was there anything on the news related to you?
Yes, my face.
And I guess when they put your face up, what was that image of?
Suspect in a stabbing.
So was the picture a picture like from your driver's license, or what kind of picture was it?
No, it was a picture of me standing at the club when I was drinking a beer.
So it was an image similar to that surveillance footage that we've seen.
It was that surveillance, actually.
And what did you do when you saw that?
I called and checked on everybody, and after that, I tried to stay out of the world, cut social medias off, and turn my phone off. And
So when you said that you called to check on everybody, who did you call?
everybody that was with us, all 4 people.
So you called Mr. Mosley?
Yes.
Did you talk to him?
Yes.
What did he say?
Make sure you okay? Yeah, you okay? Yeah, and that was it.
Okay. And you called the Hispanic male?
Yes.
Okay, so you did have his phone number.
Yes.
And did you talk to him?
Yeah, same conversation with all four of us.
And at some point, I guess, did you ever speak to the police?
Yes, came in and talked to Detective Beavis.
And do you remember when that was?
Not the exact date.
Was it pretty close in time to the night of the
Maybe
incident?
3 or 4 days went by.
Okay. And you spoke to the detective, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you provided him with information?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If I can have just one moment. Thank you, Mr. Sevilla. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Mr. Quinn?
Hi, Mr. Savella.
How's it going, Mr. Cleveland?
You said you spoke to the detective. Was that 3 days later, or was that the evening of the 21st of December, 2019?
Not exactly sure on the date. I know it was a few days later.
Okay. It wasn't that night?
No.
Saturday night?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And this fight had occurred on Division Street, is that correct? And on the far sidewalk?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how tall are you?
5'5".
5'5". And how tall were these people you were fighting?
Phew. To me, they look like giants. I don't know. I don't 6'1".
Okay.
They're, college
And
football players.
Mr. Mosley's maybe an inch or two taller than you, is that correct?
If that so. Maybe his hairline's a little taller.
Okay, and you're a little heavier, correct?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Your party had 2 vehicles in the Chewy's parking lot, is that correct?
Correct.
Your vehicle and
The other guy.
the other guys,
Mhm.
the other Hispanic, and Mr. Mosley didn't have a car there, did he?
Not at Chewy's, no.
Okay. But did he ride, Mr. Mosley ride from the Copacabana
With
to
me.
Midtown with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as you're looking, let's see, from the front of the Dogwood Bar, if you're looking out towards Division Street there, Chewy's is on your right,
That's correct.
and the parking lot's over the right where the cars are, your
Correct.
cars. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you said a guy started an altercation. Was he wearing a baseball cap on backwards
Correct.
and perhaps a faded plaid shirt of some kind?
Kind of something close to this, but they're different colors.
And he was saying something to Mr. Mosley?
As I didn't really hear nothing that was said, I was already kind of halfway down the
Down there.
stairs.
You didn't hear him say something about being disrespectful?
Your Honor, he answered the question that he didn't hear.
Also, do you have a response to the objection? He said he didn't hear anything.
Well, I've previously discussed minimally with Mr. Sevilla what happened, and
I'll sustain the objection.
okay. Now, the guy who started the altercation, what did you see him do? Were they upstairs at that point?
The only thing upstairs, him just come walking up the steps, and then made my way downstairs, and then downstairs, just bickering back and forth with Mr. Mosley.
Okay. Did you see the man in the ball cap shove Mr. Mosley on the street?
They were just having an altercation, as far as I can remember. I don't really know.
Okay. All right, I want to show you, pass a photograph to you, and I think you'll identify yourself.
Are you going to use the overhead, Mr.?
Oh, I will use the overhead this time, Your Honor. Mr. Sevilla, do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're, I guess you're back to us in that photo?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm at the bottom of the steps, third step
Okay.
up.
All right, I'm going to put it up. You see the man, the white hoodie there? You remember
Yes, sir.
him?
I don't remember him, but I see him.
Okay. Do you remember if he makes a little hand motion to you?
Not exactly sure, to be honest with you.
Now, did you see the men point back up the stairs?
And
Look
yeah,
at you and point back up the stairs.
yeah, it looks like he's doing that.
Well, I mean, were there other men who pointed back up the stairs that you can remember?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, it's 27 months ago, correct?
Correct.
And you yourself weren't drinking much that night, correct?
I was drinking a few at Dogwood. I've only had about 2, but
Okay. And
started at
Mrs. Harper was drinking quite heavily at Copacabana, correct?
I think we all were.
Okay. Now, Mr. Mosley wasn't drinking heavily at Copacabana, was he?
I didn't count nobody's drinks, to be honest
Okay.
with you.
How about the other Hispanic?
Not really sure how many he'd had.
Okay. And let's see, Mr. Seville, I'm going to write to the left of here, and you tell me if I'm writing this right. I'm just going to draw an arrow towards you and put DS out to the side, or maybe Sevilla. And does that look right to you? Does that look correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, we'll offer this as an exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay, what would be exhibit number 6? Number 6, Mr. Foyle.
And if I may speak to the client, Your Honor?
Mm-hmm.
That's all we have. Thank you, Mr. Stowe.
Okay, anything I redirect?
Here we are, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Sabella. You may step down. Just step, Mr. Foyle. Miss Allen, I want to give this picture back to Mr. Foyle. Yes, ma'am. Okay, you're next. Yes, I am releasing Mr. Sevilla from his subpoena. I mean, you have changed the cross.
Fine with me.
Okay, Mr. Sevilla, you are releasing your subpoena, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, Dave Hangley.
Sir, if you would, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
What is that, sir?
Mr. Hangley, would you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record?
Absolutely. My name is David Hangley. That's D-A-V-I-D. Last name Hangley, H-A-N-G-L-E-Y.
Mr. Hangley, where do you work?
I work at the Dogwood located in Nashville.
How long have you worked there?
Just about since it opened in October 2019.
And what position did you originally have at Dogwood Bar back in 2019?
So I was considered the number 2 security guard. So we have a head security guard and the number 2.
Okay. And what do you do now for Dogwood Bar?
I am now the head security guard.
Where is the Dogwood Bar?
It's located 1907 Division Street in Midtown.
Is that located here in Nashville, Davidson County?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I want to call your attention to the night of December 20th, 2019, going into the early morning hours of December 21st of 2019. Were you working on that night?
I was.
Can you tell the jury what your job was that night?
Just general security work. So the head of security and the number two, we go around the entire bar. We have 2 floors. We check perimeters outside. We have a small team of guards that will stay on the floor and monitor specific positions, and the 2 of us will kind of go around and just oversee the entire facility.
What time does the bar close?
We close. Closing hours are at 3 a.m. in the morning, so all customers are typically asked to remove themselves from the bar right at that time.
I guess that's a nice way of saying it.
Yes.
What typically do you all do at closing time?
Normally, so we do last call anytime between 2:30 and 2:45, depending on crowd volume. And then from that moment on, lights will come up, sound will go down a little bit, and then we just kind of let the crowd hang out and relax and get their stuff ready, close tabs, hit the bathrooms, make sure their groups are together, Uber rides are picked up, all that stuff. So we just kind of let them sit around for a little while. And then as we get closer to 3, we start to usher them out.
Now, if somebody were to try to come into the bar really close to closing time, what typically would you guys do?
Well, if it was a customer that we know has previously been inside the bar or just left and they need to go back in and close the tab, they thought their friends were coming out with them and they didn't, maybe they left a jacket or an item inside, as long as we can confirm, like, yeah, they were just inside, we'll radio it back up to the guys upstairs and let them know that customers are coming back in.
I want to call your attention to the early morning hours of December 21st, 2019. You said you were working that day.
Yep.
While you are at work, working security, are you paying attention to what's going on inside the bar?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what kind of things are you looking out for?
So our primary is signs of over-intoxication, just making sure people are able to carry themselves without any risk of injury or anything like that. So if we see anybody that shows signs of over-intoxication, we'll go and get them and ask them to leave. Outside of that, we will check, make sure that there's no kind of aggressive behavior, make sure that we're not seeing any kind of body language or hearing anybody in conversation that's sounding aggressive or threatening in any way. So.
Okay, so you're looking out for whether or not people are being aggressive or threatening.
Yep.
Okay, and you said that it's not just you. There's other people that work at the bar as well.
Yes.
About how many people are typically on staff?
For our security team or the entire?
Security team and anybody else who would be just kind of noticing and letting you know about anything that was going wrong.
Sure. So bar staff, we typically will have 1 to 2 bartenders. On a busy night, we'll have anywhere from 2 to 4 at each particular bar. So I don't remember exactly staff count that night, but typically at that point, if we're not making cuts, we'll probably have anywhere from like 4 bartenders, and then at that point, we'll probably have Asher, myself, and then a handful of guards that are still on duty.
Okay. Now, on this particular night, had you seen personally, or did you become aware of any problem on the inside of the bar that night?
No, it was actually a relatively quiet night. It was a pretty easygoing, casual night with all the customers. It was actually a pretty fun one.
And calling your attention specifically to the top of the staircase on the 2nd floor, and that obviously goes down to the 1st floor. Did anything out of the ordinary happen up there that you saw?
No, so at that point in the night, we had made the all clear to start ushering people out. Everyone was starting to file down the stairs. We kind of get a little bottleneck at the top there, as you're referencing to, which is usually where we'll try to monitor, because if people get crowded at the end there, and we're yelling at them to get out, they're trying to figure out what they're doing. So sometimes tensions can get raised up there. But that night, like I said, it was pretty calm all the way through. We were walking around. Jake, Asher, and I were monitoring the top floor, and like I said, nothing was really, no body language was going on. We didn't overhear any conversations that caught our attention, and it was us and them. So everyone just kind of gathered around the top of the stairs. Some of the guys actually called out and said goodbye to us, said have a good night. We said back to them. People started walking down, and then when they cleared the doors, we closed them and locked them and started doing our cleanup.
Okay. Did a time come when you became aware that something out of the ordinary was happening?
Yes. So, I mean, typically in a normal night, everyone congregates outside the doors, up our chute, and then across the sidewalk. So it's just kind of pandemonium out there. So we just hear a lot of noise, a lot of talking going on. But I noticed there's a group across the street when I was going back up the stairs. We have a large wall of windows where the stairs go, so I'm able to overlook the patio and across the street. And I noticed a group across the street. I recognized a bunch of them from being guys that were in here in the bar. And it just looked like they were kind of roughhousing with each other across the street. It looked, it was like a little huddle. Like I said, I couldn't identify everybody across the street because it was dark out. But I noticed a few of the clothing, and I recognized them from being inside. And it didn't look like a fight. It looked like a bunch of guys just kind of roughhousing with each other. But the weird thing to me was that everyone's arms were down, and it just looked like like a little mosh pit, like shoulder bumping. So I just kind of watched it, and a couple moments after I kind of focused in on it, I saw a gentleman run off to the right towards a bar called Chewy's, which is at the corner on their side of the street. And at the same time, I saw that gentleman running to my right, his left. I also witnessed two other gentlemen from the same group start to move across the street back towards the dogwood side of the block. And when I witnessed them, I saw by the time they got to our corner, right outside of our patio fence, I noticed one of them kind of dropped to a knee and then went out of my vision behind the fence. It was also very crowded, so there were easily 20, 30 people just kind of in that vicinity at the same time. So people were getting lost in the crowd, and I did notice that someone dropped down. So I typically won't go outside after we close the bar unless people are on our property. We don't deal with anything off property typically.
But if you saw something that had concerned you,
Yes.
Would you have either gone out there or would you have called the police?
Depending on how immediate danger was, from what I saw, I felt that I should go out myself and just check real quick. It was from what I witnessed, I just was afraid that someone might have been hit in the head. Maybe they had a concussion symptom.
Okay, and let me pause you right there real
Sure.
quick. Okay, so when you saw what was happening that you described as across the street and looked kind of like a mosh pit situation, at that point, did you think that you needed to go out and check or call 911?
When I initially identified people across the street, my initial assumption was, there might be a fight starting. Then, like I said, it just looked like roughhousing, but it just seemed odd. You don't see that very often. So I watched it, but I could not see any particular strikes. I couldn't see any specifics. There was a car in front of them. There was a street pole in front of them. So things were obstructing my view. I mean, the window itself is not the clearest window to look through. But just the body language and the behavior and the mannerisms. And then when I saw people leaving the group was when I thought something had gone down.
So you saw one person leave, and then you saw two people, and one person drop to their knee.
Yep.
Okay. Can you go from there and tell the jury what happened and what you saw and experienced after that?
Yeah, so I saw the primary run off to my right to Chewy's, like I said, and then I also saw two other gentlemen from the same group come back towards our bar side of the block. Saw the one gentleman drop down, and then he became obscured by other people and physical objects, so I decided to come out and just make sure no one was seriously injured. Went down my chute, turned left down the sidewalk to the corner of our bar property, and immediately I saw that group of guys that had been in the bar. Everyone was kind of hurried and a little panicked, but people were intoxicated, so it was kind of hard to read every body language. But I identified one gentleman, which I came to learn was Paul, was laying down, and a lot of his friends...
let me pause you there. Paul Trapeni?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I saw him laying on his side. Some of his friends had grabbed him by his arm and were trying to just lift him up, telling him to wake up, get up, those kind of things. So I looked at the group and asked if anyone had called 911. I did not get a quick answer from anybody. They were all kind of distressed and like I said, intoxicated and confused. So I ran right back inside. As I turned around, I also saw another gentleman in a white hoodie, and he did have blood on his hoodie. So I said to my manager, I ran back inside of the door, and I told him to call 911. It looks like a possible 2 injury. We might need 2 ambulances. So I ran back. I grabbed my head of security, Jake Asher, and said, hey, come with me. Ran back around with him behind me. I wanted to get to Paul first because he looked like he was in more distress, but he was surrounded by so many people, and I couldn't fight through them all. So I identified the gentleman in the white hoodie again and started assessing him, told Asher to go around me to Paul. So he was working on clearing that out to get to Paul. I ended up taking who I later found out was Clay. He had a white shirt from the back, was perfectly white, and when I turned him around, from about his collarbone down was solid red. So I told him to lay down. I got him down on the sidewalk, propped his legs up kind of under my leg. I lifted his hoodie, try to find any kind of wounds, and I immediately discovered, with the blood, I don't know exactly how large, but in quick assessment, it looked to me like a roughly 1 to 2 inch wide by 3 to 4 inch long puncture or gash in between his ribs on his left side.
And is Mr. Clay Beathard conscious at this time?
Yes, so he was in much better shape when I first approached the group. He was conscious. He wasn't necessarily speaking too much, but he was kind of looking around. He seemed alert. I identified myself to him, and he kind of nodded at me. That's when I noticed his blood, and then laid him down. So he was kind of communicating with me. No, like I said, no real words were being exchanged. And then once I got him laid down and assessed him, it was just kind of go from there. So Asher came around, started working on Paul. I started working on Clay, got him laid down, identified the stab wound. I didn't have anything on me except for a dirty bar towel, which I didn't want to use, so I took his own clothing that was on him and just took my hands and tried to insert my hands into the wound as much as I could and apply as much pressure as I could. At that point, people had kind of huddled around, and it was getting pretty chaotic, so I was trying to kind of keep Clay and I clear. I didn't know if whoever did it was still in the area. I didn't know if they were going to come back, so I was trying to keep alert for that. So was Asher. I also had a third guard, Dakota, come out to assist me. My initial plan was to have him help me lift up Clay's legs and just keep him elevated while I put pressure on his torso. But as I was having him come around, I got a tap on the back, and I heard a gentleman ask if he's okay. So as I turned around, I began to tell him, like, yeah, your friend's going to be okay. And as I looked up, it was a gentleman that I found out later was AJ. And he was alert. He was talking to me, like I said. He came up and asked, is he going to be okay? I immediately answered him back. But I also noticed when I first looked at him that he had a wound from, over his eye, down across it, over his cheek. So I asked if he was okay. He was still in shock, it seems. So he answered, yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, is your face okay? And he's like, yeah, I feel like I got hit. I think I got punched. And I was like, okay, hey, listen, here's my guy Dakota. So I got Dakota to work with him, make sure he was okay. So I ended up just taking care of Clay on my own. AJ, I believe, was eventually taken care of. Dakota came back and helped me lift his legs up. At that point, paramedics were already called. I knew they were on the way, and I don't know exactly how long it was in between the call and when they actually arrived, but to me, in the moment, it seemed relatively quick. Division's a hard street to get down, but luckily it was the end of the night and it was open, so they got there pretty fast. It looked to myself and Jake Asher that Paul was already in a bad spot at that point. So we had, when the paramedics first got there, we waved him down for Paul first. Same time, we had a second paramedic come out, so I did a transition with him for Clay. And at that point, they took over, and Asher, Dakota, and I just kind of went into crowd control. There were a lot of people frantic, a lot of people screaming and crying, people sitting in the middle of the street. So a lot of confusion and a lot of scared people. So at that point, we just did crowd control. We just tried to calm people down, got the street cleared out, got people out of the way, helped, kept it clear for the paramedics, and then just started doing our close up when they got out of there.
Okay. At any time during any of this, did you see anybody have a weapon?
No, I did not.
And in Mr. Trapeni and Mr. Beathard's personal space, did you see any weapon around them?
No, if there was anything, it would have been something tucked away in a pocket that we wouldn't have identified unless, we were doing some sort of pat down after the fact. But at no point during any of my interactions with any of the parties did I see any weapon. Nothing was brandished, nothing was made visible, nothing was shown,
Did the police arrive after that?
Yeah, the police arrived with the paramedics.
And so they came at the same time as the paramedics?
I can't say exactly at the same time, but I started seeing uniforms all around the same, few minutes
And
stretch.
did they block it off as a crime scene at that point?
Yeah, once the paramedics were able, as far as I know, once the paramedics were able to get everyone loaded and transported, they locked it down.
Does the Dogwood Bar have video?
Yes.
And did you all provide the video to the
I
police?
believe they did, yes.
If I could have just one moment, Your Honor. Those are my questions.
Okay, Mr. Kelly?
Hi, sir.
How are you?
Good. The Dogwood Bar security cameras, you say at a certain time the music goes down and the lights go up, and some of those cameras, they'll switch from black and white to color at that point?
Some of them do, I think, yeah.
For instance, the second floor R/R elevator camera, I guess that's restroom.
I would imagine, I don't know specific camera technology terms, that would be the IT.
Okay.
But yes, I know some of the cameras on that floor do turn back to color.
So, okay, you're not familiar with if you look at the surveillance video in the lower right-hand corner, it has sort of the conventional name of the camera?
I don't know what they are, but yes, there's information describing which camera locations are which.
Okay, all righty. And so you don't regularly sort of look at that camera and pull the video?
I will monitor cameras, yes, but I just don't know specific
You don't pay attention to
IT
that?
titles for each individual camera name, no.
Okay. Now, were any of those folks involved in this mosh pit? Were they regulars?
No one from the group was a regular. No one that we had seen besides that night.
Okay. And are there one or two bars upstairs?
There are 2 bar locations upstairs. Yes, we have
Okay.
one right at the top of the stairs, and then if you make a left and go into the floor, there's another main bar.
And that's sort of a wraparound bar that faces to the patio and to the interior.
Yes, sir.
And there's a bar downstairs that's a wraparound, full circle, or
Yeah.
oval. Okay. And you spoke of people running off, is that correct?
At which point? Which moment are you talking about?
Well, I just, you see Mr. Beathard jog back across the street. Did you actually see that, or?
Yeah, at the time I didn't know identities of anybody, but I saw one gentleman run from the group across the street to Chewy's parking lot, and I then, after that, saw 2 other gentlemen walk back towards our direction.
Okay, but you didn't see anybody walking at that point towards the Chewy's parking lot, did you? I mean, anybody running?
Oh no, I did. Yeah, he was
Okay.
he was in a hurried. You'd say like a hurried jog.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Now,
He was not taking his time.
and that's one person, or?
That was one person going towards Chewy's. Yes.
Okay, all right, not a group of 4? No. Okay, all right, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Anything to redirect?
Just one moment, Your Honor. If we could turn on the computer screen, Your Honor. If you could look at your computer screen as soon as it comes on. Do you know who this person is right here?
The screen went black.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there it's back.
Where the arrow is.
Yep, that looks like me.
That's you?
Mm-hmm.
So you were actually on the stairs that night?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you so much. You can watch that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Your Honor, for the record on the video, that was 12/21/2019, Saturday to 48:07. And the file is DVR2 camera 3.
All right.
Yes, Your Honor, the state called Jason Terry.
Jason Terry.
nothing but the truth to help you God.
I do.
Would you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Jason Terry, Jasonterry.
Do you work for Metro Nashville Police Department?
I do.
How long have you worked for Metro Nashville Police Department?
Since August of 2000, so a little bit over 21 years.
What do you do for the police department?
Current assignment is with the Crime Scene Investigations Unit.
And generally, what other assignments have you had within the police department?
Work patrol. I was a detective in the Sex Crimes Unit for approximately 4.5 years, also in auto theft for 5. And I was also attached to the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force for a little over 3 years.
Okay. But currently, you're with the Crime Scene Investigation Unit.
That is correct.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about that unit and what y'all do?
Crime Scene Unit, our main goal is we'll get called to various scenes. Pretty much if patrol needs us and requests us, we'll come out. Our main goal is to, when we go out on a crime scene, is aid in helping identify, document, preserve, and collecting any evidence at the scene.
Do y'all get called out to every single scene?
We do not know.
And what is the process that takes place when you get called out to a scene?
By policy, we are required to respond out to homicides and officer-involved shootings. Beyond that, it pretty much is dictated by the situation. If patrol or investigation feels they need our resources or equipment or training, they'll call us out. More times than not, we'll respond out, whether it's a violent felony or something as minor as a vehicle crash involving a metro vehicle.
Do you have any particularized training in the field of crime scene investigation?
I do.
And do you actually have a certification?
Yes, we do.
Can you tell the jury about that?
I'm certified through the International Association of Identification as a crime scene investigator. The training I've had beyond just a lot of on-the-job training is they send us through the National Forensics Academy. It's in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It's through the University of Tennessee, and it's an intensive 10-week course that involves various topics of forensics and crime scene investigation, such things as, methods of photography, fingerprinting, or even how to excavate a crime scene.
Okay. I want to call your attention to this case. On December 21st, 2019, were you called out to the Dogwood Bar located at 1907 Division Street?
I was.
Is that located here in Nashville, Davidson County?
Yes, ma'am.
And while you were en route, were you able to speak with a detective who was handling the case and get a briefing?
I did, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And why is it important for you as a crime scene investigator to get a briefing while you're on your way?
On an incident such as this, it's really important to touch base just to kind of get a firmer grip on what's going on. It helps me determine that I'm arriving and showing up with the right equipment, the right resources if I need additional personnel. And also there's certain protocols within our unit that we may or may not have to call out a supervisor or page them out if needed.
In general, while you were on your way to this crime scene, what did you learn?
I learned that there had been an altercation in front of Dogwood Bar that resulted in 3 individuals being stabbed, and 2 of those individuals had critical life-threatening injuries.
And once you got to the scene, were you able to learn whether or not there was video that captured at least part of this incident?
I did, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Were you able to review that video?
Yes, ma'am.
And in your review of the video, did that aid you? So I forgot exactly where we were, but I think I was asking you about did you become aware that there was video that captured this incident?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Were you able to review that video?
Yes, ma'am.
And in reviewing that video, did that assist you in knowing what to do as far as crime scene investigation goes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how did that help you?
Anytime you can witness the video or the incident, it helps kind of define the scope of the crime scene, or at least initially where you need to concentrate your efforts.
Where were those cameras located?
There's a camera above the front door to Dogwood facing out across Division Street. I believe there was also one on, I think it was Loser's Bar, which is just south next door to Dogwood, that I believe also faced out across Division Street.
Okay, so once you knew your general area that you needed to look in, can you tell the jury what you did?
Yes, based on what I witnessed on the security video, went back outside, walked across the street, because this was on the sidewalk on the west side of Division Street in front of 1908 Division Street, where it seems where everything occurred. Walked over there, checked the area, noticed on the sidewalk about midway between the sidewalk and the road, it looked to be several blood drops on the sidewalk. Also noticed it was just a little glass tumbler a little further north than that. It just kind of seemed out of place for the location. Hadn't been there a long time.
Okay. And did you notice any other area where there would be a blood trail?
I did. In the middle of Division Street, kind of in the southbound lane before you get to the double lines, there was, it looks like the beginnings of a blood trail, and you could see it cross over Division Street, the northbound lane, onto the sidewalk where there was a considerable amount of blood right there near Dogwood.
At that point, did you decide to photograph the scene?
I did.
And is there a methodology that you usually use when you photograph a scene?
There he is. In crime scene work, you usually want to take a series or you want to take 3 different types of photographs. One of them is called an overall photograph, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just overall the scene as a whole. You do it from different perspectives, different angles. The second one is what they call a mid-range photograph. And the mid-range photograph, it depicts an individual item in relation to the rest of the scene or a fixed object in the scene. It has more to do with spatial relationships of objects. The final one is close-up photograph, and that's exactly what it is. It's a close-up photograph of a specific item.
What is an evidence marker?
Evidence marker, we will place those at different items of interest or evidence. It kind of helps to note, especially when you go through and collect and when you document where something was located and what exactly it was. And it's especially helpful when you have quite a bit of evidence out on a scene.
Okay. And here in Nashville, are our evidence markers yellow?
Yes, they're plastic. They're kind of an inverted V look. They're fluorescent yellow. They stand out, and they have black numbering on them.
And okay, so you said that they're numbered.
Yes.
Is there any significance as to which piece of evidence gets to be number 1 and which one gets to be number 2?
No, there's no significance in it. We all have our, the things we like doing best. You kind of like just looking at it. You have a flow of it, but there's no inference to, such as if number 1 happened before number 10. That's not necessarily the case. They're just mainly to document evidence, where it's at, where it's located, and assist in cataloging that evidence.
I'm handing you up photographs which are labeled A through X. And Your Honor, I've previously showed these to defense counsel.
Okay.
And if we could use the computer screen, please. Could you look at these photographs and tell the jury whether or not those are the photographs that you took on December 21st, 2019?
Yes, they are.
Do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene as you saw it on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe that those photographs would aid the jury in understanding what the crime scene looked like?
Yes, they would.
Your Honor, I would offer those. I would offer that as the next collective exhibit A through I, or A through X.
This exhibit number is 7.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, I have this on a digital presentation for us to go through for the jury.
Okay.
Okay. Detective Terry, I'm starting with photograph A. Can you tell the jury what this is?
On any scene, we do what they call is, like it says up top, the ID photo work order. It just kind of denotes where we're at. The complaint number kind of identifies the photographs to follow and what they're in relation to.
Okay, and I'm showing you photograph B. Can you just explain for the jury what this is?
That's just an overall front shot of the Dogwood Bar from Division Street looking in.
Photograph C.
Again, it's just a continuation, an overall of in front of Dogwood, kind of starting to progress south as an overall photograph.
Okay, and what is this?
That is crime scene tape.
Okay, and why do y'all put up crime scene tape?
It protects the scene, kind of keeps folks out, keeps the scene from being disturbed and disturbing any evidence.
Okay, and this is the crime scene tape, and then do we also see crime scene tape going all the way around the bar?
We do.
Okay. And photograph D?
This is also just a view of the sidewalk just south of the Dogwood Bar. And what you see right there is an overview of the ending point of the blood trail. So those little spots you see right there, it's blood.
Okay, and you can point at or you can touch the screen and show it to the jury.
That location right there is where the blood trail terminated at.
Okay, and photograph E?
Again, more close up, more of a mid-range photograph of that same blood.
Photograph F?
This is facing from the sidewalk, looking back west across Division Street, kind of towards, kind of inverse where the blood trail began at.
Photograph G?
Again, continuation of the same series, just overall of where the blood trail is.
Photograph H?
This is from the the southbound lane of Division Street. Looking at the building on your left there is 1908 Division Street, and the sidewalk where the blood drops are located, and they're approximately right over in that location.
Okay, and does this also show the extension of the crime scene tape to
It
this
does.
house and fully all the way across the bar as well?
It does, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Photograph I?
Again, it's showing where the kind of the blood trail begins, which would be right over in this location, because you can see it going that way.
Okay. Photograph J?
Again, the beginning point right there of the blood trail is facing towards the west side of Division Street.
And photograph K?
These are the blood droplets on the sidewalk. And one thing I didn't mention earlier, anytime we're on a scene, we like going through and taking the series of photographs before we place out any evidence markers, kind of denotes this is how we found the scene when we first arrived, before we put out any markers. Now, what we'll get into is you will put out the markers, then go through this same series of photographs again.
Okay. Photograph L?
It's just a close-up of the blood drops on the sidewalk.
Photograph M?
This is looking back from the blood drops towards the glass tumbler, which is right there.
Photograph N?
This is where the security camera of the Dogwood facing back out towards Division Street.
Photograph O?
A close-up of the same video camera, security camera.
Photograph P?
An overall, kind of a overall mid-range photograph with the blood droplets at the evidence marker number 1 and the glass tumbler back at the evidence marker number 2.
Photograph Q.
Mid-range photograph of the number 1 marker with the blood droplets.
Photograph R.
Close-up of the same marker and same blood drops.
Photograph S.
Close-up of the glass tumbler.
Okay, and when you are identifying evidence, do you know whether or not it's going to become relevant at some point?
No, you do not.
So sometimes you might identify something that ends up not really mattering to the case all that much.
Right. Like you have a glass tumbler with Santa emblems on it. It's not dirty. It's middle of December. There's no dew on it. There's no frost on it. It just didn't seem to belong in the location where it was found, and that's why it was of interest to me.
Okay. Photograph T.
This is looking back approximately where the tumbler's at, looking back towards the east side of Division Street, across Division Street.
Photograph U.
Again, going in the opposite direction with the blood droplets, which begin here and head towards the sidewalk.
Photograph B.
A continuation of that same series of the blood drops to the sidewalk.
Photograph W.
Close up of where the blood trail terminated.
Photograph X.
It just shows where the tape is and also where number 2 is, looking back west of Division Street.
Did you collect any samples from the blood drops that you located?
I did, yes ma'am.
Can you tell the jury how you went about doing that?
When we collect blood samples, or especially in this case, and we're talking specifically about the number 1 marker, the blood droplets on the sidewalk, we have packaged cotton swabs that we use. We also have little tubes of distilled water if need be. And in this case, you just open up the swab containers, take them out, break the seal on the distilled water, add a couple of drops to water to each swab head, and you just set it on the sample. In some cases, you just rub it in to get the sample. Other times, you just sit it there and absorb what's there. Once it's collected on the tips of the swab, you re-put it back in the packaging, fold it over, you put integrity tape on it, which you'll see on some items. You'll see some blue and white tape. We call that integrity tape. You initial it and date it and put the particulars of the case you're working, where you found the drops, what date and time you picked them up. You also write that on the outside of the packaging.
Can we use the overhead, please? And you've just been handed up something. Can you tell the jury what that is?
What this is the paper sack in which the separate package involving the swabs were placed.
And how do you know that that is the sample that you collected on this particular night?
On this sample, you have my initials, JT, the top left. It's my handwriting, same complaint number, same location, the date and time that I collected the sample, and exactly what's inside. And here's listed as 2 DNA sample swabs of blood. And on the back, this is when I said integrity tape, that's what that is.
If you want to hand that up, I'll put it on the overhead and the jury can see it a little bit better. Oh, yes.
Do you want me to come back inside, ma'am?
Okay. So can you just point out to the jury what you were describing just a second ago?
Again, my initials, JT, the date that the package was sealed, and the blue and white tape. It's evidence tape, or we call it integrity tape.
Why is it important to put integrity tape on something like DNA evidence?
Well, it prevents it from being compromised. It protects the integrity of what's inside and prevents it from being contaminated.
And when you, so after you collected this and sealed it in this manner, what did you do with it?
At some point, once we cleared the scene and got back, it's packaged exactly the way you see it, and it gets transported down to our property room for storage.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about the property room and whether or not it's a secure facility?
Yes, our property room is a secure facility. I can talk about the way it is on my shift. I work third shift, 10:30 at night to 7 in the morning. The property room is not manned 24/7. They usually come in 5:30 or 6. So during our hours, we have key card access to the front door of the property room, which leads into the lobby, and then we have a separate key card access to another door that leads into an offshore workroom. Inside that workroom, since nobody's working, there's various lockers of different sizes in which we place the evidence along with the paperwork to secure it. There are master locks on these which don't have keys attached, so as soon as you lock them, the only way it can be reopened is by someone from the property room.
Would the property room accept a piece of evidence that was not received in a sealed condition?
No, they would not.
Your Honor, I will offer this as exhibit number 8. Can you tell the jury what a Pharaoh scan is?
Yes.
And if you could hold on for just a second.
Yes, ma'am.
If we could switch back to the computer, please. Okay, can you tell the jury what a Pharaoh scan is?
Right. Pharaoh scan. Pharaoh is a brand name of a 3D scanner that we use on certain crime scenes. What it is, it's a device that sits on top of a tripod, and it collects and conducts millions of measurements per second using laser technology. Along with all the data that it's taking in, it also photographs the area as it rotates 360 degrees. All that data is saved onto an SD card, and that data can be converted through Pharaoh software into a 3D rendering of a crime scene.
Okay, did you do that in this case?
It was, yes, ma'am.
And after you collect the images for the Pharaoh scan, or after you did that in this particular case, was a copy provided to the DA's office on a thumb drive?
Yes.
Okay. So going back just a little bit, just in case anybody wants to look at this later, in order to open this, you would click the Start Scene to Go. Is that correct?
Yes, in Windows, that's correct. There you go.
Okay. And then once you click on Scene to Go, does this image pop up?
It does.
And then you click on that image.
Yes.
And from here, if you wanted to look at the Pharaoh scan, would you choose one of the markers?
Right, you can choose the scan. It's labeled as 000. Sometimes it numbers them starting at 0 instead of 1. And you would click on whichever one you wanted to look at.
Okay, so for the record, I'm going to click on scan 000 and choose the panorama view. And so once you do that, if I started cycling around here, does it just show a 3D view of the crime scene?
That's correct.
And are these your evidence markers that you have located?
They are. It's number 1 to the left and 2 to the right.
And if the jury wanted to go around, they could just use this panoramic view, is that correct?
Right, you could go 360. You can also rotate overhead. It covers 360 degrees this way, and I believe it's 330 degrees across the vertical. So basically the only thing it doesn't scan is its own base.
So is this the front of the Dogwood Bar?
It is.
And is this Losers where that other video was collected?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
And if the jury wanted to get a little bit of a different perspective, then could they click on another one of the scans?
Yes,